The crack of bone against boot echoed through the Atlanta Superior courtroom like a gunshot. Officer Ryan Brennan's steel-toed boot connected with Dr. Elijah Carter's ribs, sending the handcuffed man sprawling across the polished floor. What Brennan didn't know, what nobody in that courtroom knew, was that he had just assaulted a Medal of Honor recipient, a former SEAL Team 6 commander, whose single phone call would bring the entire justice system to its knees. Stay with me until the end of this incredible true story, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories of justice travel. The dashboard clock glowed 11:47 p.m. as Dr. Elijah Carter guided his Mercedes S-Class through the quiet streets of Buckhead, Atlanta's most affluent neighborhood. The autumn air was crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves through his barely cracked window. After performing 2 emergency surgeries that had stretched well into the evening, exhaustion pulled at his eyelids like lead weights. His scrubs were still beneath his jacket, and the hospital ID badge bearing Chief of Neurosurgery Emory University Hospital caught the streetlight as he adjusted his rearview mirror. Elijah's phone buzzed in the center console. A text from his wife, Amara. "Made your favorite lamb tagine. It's in the warmer. Drive safe, baby." The kids wanted to wait up but couldn't make it past 9. A smile crossed his weathered face. 20 years of marriage, and she still made sure he had a hot meal waiting, no matter how late he worked. His fingers found the small compass tattoo on his left wrist, a reminder of his SEAL days when coming home to a hot meal was a distant dream during 18-month deployments. The streets were empty, save for the occasional taxi or late-night delivery vehicle. Elijah's mind wandered to his patient from earlier, a 7-year-old girl with a traumatic brain injury from a car accident. The surgery had been successful, but the next 72 hours would be critical. He made a mental note to check on her first thing in the morning, even though it was technically his day off. That's when he saw them, the red and blue lights exploding in his rearview mirror like fireworks against the dark street. His heart rate, trained to remain steady even under enemy fire, in Fallujah, ticked up slightly. He hadn't been speeding. He'd made a complete stop at the last intersection. His registration was current, and he'd had the Mercedes serviced just last week. "Probably a broken taillight," he muttered, already reaching for his wallet, as he smoothly pulled to the curb in front of a row of million-dollar townhomes. The street was well-lit security cameras, mounted on several properties, details his tactical mind automatically cataloged. Officer Ryan Brennan emerged from the patrol car like a predator stalking prey. 6'3", built like a linebacker gone slightly to seed, with hands that had clearly seen their share of altercations. His partner, Officer Derek Mills, younger and visibly nervous, remained by the patrol car, hand resting on his service weapon. Brennan's flashlight beam hit Elijah's face like a slap, causing him to squint and raise a hand to shield his eyes. "License and registration," Brennan barked, his tone suggesting this was anything but a routine stop. "Of course, officer. My license is in my wallet, and the registration is in the glove compartment. May I ask why you pulled me over? I'll ask the questions here. Move slowly." Elijah's movements were deliberate, controlled muscle memory from years of high-stakes operations where sudden movements meant death. He handed over his documents, noting how Brennan's eyes narrowed at the Buckhead address, at the medical degree designation after his name. "Dr. Carter?" Brennan drew out the title like it tasted sour. "You been drinking tonight, Doc?" "No, sir. I just finished a double shift at Emory. I'm heading home to my family." "Step out of the vehicle." The command hit Elijah like cold water. In 25 years of driving, he'd been pulled over exactly twice, both times for minor speeding, both times ending with a warning and a handshake. "Officer, I'm happy to comply, but could you tell me what this is about?" I said, "Step out of the vehicle, now." Elijah's tactical mind went into assessment mode. Brennan's body language screamed aggression, squared shoulders, widespread stance, hand hovering near his weapon. Mills had moved closer, positioning himself at Elijah's blind spot. This wasn't a traffic stop. This was a takedown position. He stepped out slowly, hands visible, movements telegraphed. The cold air bit through his scrubs. "Turn around, hands on the vehicle." "Officer Brennan." Elijah read the nameplate, keeping his voice steady, professional. "I believe there's been some misunderstanding. I'm happy to—" The first shove caught him off guard, slamming him against the Mercedes hard enough to knock the wind from his lungs. Brennan's hands were rough, invasive, patting him down with unnecessary force. "You got any weapons on you, drugs?" "No, sir. I'm a neurosurgeon. I'm coming from the hospital. I don't care if you're the Pope. Spread your legs wider." The search was humiliating, conducted in full view of anyone who might be watching from the townhomes. Elijah noticed curtains moving in several windows, the distinctive glow of phone cameras. Good, he thought. Witnesses. "He's clean," Mills said, though Brennan hadn't asked. "Check the vehicle," Brennan ordered, keeping Elijah pinned against the car with one meaty hand. "Do you have probable cause to search my vehicle?" Elijah asked, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to giving orders, not taking them. Brennan leaned in close, his breath reeking of stale coffee and something sharper, whiskey maybe. "I smell marijuana." It was a lie so bold, so transparent that Elijah almost laughed. His drug tests were monthly mandatory for someone with surgical privileges. He hadn't even had a beer in 6 months. "Officer, that's impossible. I don't use marijuana. I submit to regular drug testing at the hospital. I'm asking you again, what is this about?" Mills was already in the Mercedes, tossing the interior with the enthusiasm of someone looking for something specific. The young officer pulled out Elijah's gym bag, his medical bag, even the emergency surgical kit he kept in the trunk. Instruments worth thousands of dollars were handled like toys dropped on the wet pavement. "Nothing in the main cabin," Mills called out, but there was something in his voice, disappointment, confusion. Brennan's grip tightened on Elijah's neck, pushing his face harder against the cold metal of the car. "Check again. Check under the seats." This time Mills took longer. Elijah could hear him fumbling around, and then a pause that stretched too long. "Got something." Mills's voice cracked like a teenager's. He emerged holding a small plastic bag filled with white powder. Elijah's blood turned to ice. "That's not mine." "Sure it isn't." Brennan spun him around, slamming him back against the car. "Dr. Elijah Carter, you're under arrest for possession of a controlled substance with intent to distribute." "That's not mine." Elijah's voice rose for the first time. "I've never seen that before. You planted—" The punch to his solar plexus doubled him over, gasping. Through tears of pain, he saw Mills' shocked expression, saw the young officer take an involuntary step back. "He was resisting," Brennan said calmly, as if commenting on the weather. "You saw him resist, didn't you, Mills?" Mills nodded slowly, but his eyes were on the growing crowd of onlookers, phones raised, recording everything. The handcuffs bit into Elijah's wrists as Brennan ratcheted them tighter than necessary. Each click was a nail in the coffin of his career, his reputation, his life as he knew it. "You can't do this," Elijah gasped, still fighting for breath. "That's not mine. Check the cameras. Check your own body cam footage." "Body cam's malfunctioning," Brennan said, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Happens sometimes. Mills call for a tow. This vehicle's being impounded as evidence." As they dragged him toward the patrol car, Elijah caught sight of a familiar face in the crowd, Mrs. Chen, his neighbor, a retired attorney who walked her dog at all hours. Her phone was steady, recording everything. She gave him the slightest nod, a promise. "Please." Elijah tried one more time as they shoved him into the back seat. "Call my wife." Let me call my wife. She'll be worried. You can call her from booking, Brennan said, slamming the door. The ride to the precinct was a blur of radio chatter, and Brennan's occasional comments to Mills about these people, thinking they were above the law just because they had money and degrees. Mills said nothing, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. At the station, the booking process was deliberately humiliating. Elijah, who had operated on Atlanta's elite, who had saved the lives of judges and politicians and police officers, was treated like a common criminal. Photos, fingerprints, the removal of his wedding ring, and watch each step designed to strip away dignity. "One phone call," he said when they finally finished. He called Amara. Her voice, sleepy and confused, sharpened to a blade when he explained. "They did what Elijah, that's impossible. You don't even take aspirin without reading the label 3 times. I know, baby. I know. Call Sarah Chen, not the neighbor, the other one. The defense attorney. Tell her everything. And Amara, there were witnesses. Make sure Sarah knows there were witnesses. I'm coming down there right now. No, stay with the kids. They don't need to see this. Just call Sarah. She'll know what to do." The holding cell reeked of urine and despair. Elijah found a relatively clean corner and sat his mind racing through possibilities. This wasn't random. Brennan had been looking for something specific, had been ready. With that bag of whatever it was, cocaine probably. Though Elijah wouldn't know cocaine from baking soda. Hours crawled by. He marked time by the changing of shifts, the arrival of new arrestees, a drunk college student, 2 men picked up for fighting a woman who cried continuously in Spanish. None of them would look at him directly. Even here in the great equalizer of a holding cell, he was marked as different. The way he sat, the way he held himself, the quiet authority that 20 years of life and death decisions had carved into his bearing, it all set him apart. Sarah Chen arrived at dawn, her appearance immaculate despite the early hour. She was small, barely 5 feet tall, but she moved through the precinct like she owned it. Elijah had operated on her mother 2 years ago, a complex spinal tumor that 3 other surgeons had declared inoperable. Sarah had sworn she owed him a life debt. He was about to collect. "Don't say anything," were her first words when they finally brought him to the interview room. "Not one word, unless I tell you to." She listened to his account, taking notes in shorthand, occasionally asking for clarification. When he finished, she leaned back, her expression thoughtful. "They messed up," she said finally. "Multiple witnesses, including Margaret Chen, no relation, by the way, who happens to be a retired district court judge. She got everything on video, including Officer Mills apparently planting something under your seat, while Brennan kept you distracted." Relief flooded through Elijah so fast, it made him dizzy. "So, this will all go away?" "Eventually. But Elijah..." Sarah's expression darkened. "This is bigger than just you. I pulled Brennan's record. 17 complaints in 5 years, all from black professionals, doctors, lawyers, business owners. All in Buckhead. All dropped or dismissed. He's hunting Elijah. You're just his latest trophy. Why does anyone do anything? Power, prejudice. Maybe he's got debts. Maybe someone's paying him to harass successful black residents until they move. Maybe he's just a racist with a badge. Does it matter?" It did matter, but not right now. Right now, Elijah just wanted to go home, hold his wife, tell his children that Daddy was okay. "Bail hearings at 9, Sarah said, checking her phone. "Judge Harrison, he's fair, but he's also tough on drug cases. The prosecution will paint you as a flight risk successful doctor with means to flee. We'll counter with your ties to the community, your surgical schedule, your patients who need you. What about my job if the hospital finds out? They already know. I called the chief of staff myself. Dr. Winters is prepared to testify on your behalf if needed. You've got more support than you realize, Elijah. But, she hesitated. There's something else. Something you haven't told me. Elijah's hand went unconsciously to his wrist, to the compass tattoo hidden under the jail-issued paper bracelet. It's not relevant. Everything's relevant. Elijah, I've known you for 2 years. You've never mentioned military service, but you have a tactical mindset. You never sit with your back to a door. And when that drunk patient took a swing at you last year, you disarmed him using a move I've only seen in Marine Corps training videos. Navy, he corrected quietly. Not Marines. Sarah's eyes widened. Navy. As in, did my time, served my country, and came home to serve my community in a different way. That part of my life is classified and sealed. It has nothing to do with this. Elijah, if you're a veteran, especially a combat veteran, that could help with the judge, no. The word came out harder than intended. That life is behind me. I'm Dr. Carter now, not Commander Carter. We fight this as a civilian matter. Sarah looked like she wanted to argue, but thought better of it. All right. But if things go sideways, we might need every advantage we can get. The bail hearing was set for the main courtroom, a grand space with soaring ceilings and walls lined with portraits of stern-faced judges from centuries past. Elijah entered in shackles, the orange jumpsuit hanging loose on his athletic frame. The gallery was packed, colleagues from the hospital, neighbors, even some of his former patients. Amara sat in the front row, her expression fierce, protective. Their children, 16-year-old Marcus and 14-year-old Zara, were notably absent, kept home at Elijah's insistence. Judge Harrison presided like an old king on his throne, his white hair and deeply lined face giving him an air of ancient authority. He reviewed the file in silence while the courtroom held its breath. Assistant District Attorney Jennifer Walsh stood first. She was young, ambitious, clearly seeing this as a career-making case. Your Honor, the state requests bail be set at $500,000. Dr. Carter was found with nearly 50 grams of cocaine in his vehicle. Objection, Sarah interrupted. Alleged to have been found. We dispute the validity of the search and the chain of custody for any alleged evidence. Noted, Judge Harrison said dryly. Continue, Ms. Walsh. The defendant has substantial financial means, including properties in 3 states and international connections through his medical practice. He poses a significant flight risk. Your Honor, Sarah stood, her voice cutting through the prosecutor's argument like a scalpel. Dr. Carter has performed over 3,000 surgeries at Emory Hospital, saving countless lives, including, I might add, the daughter of Officer Patricia Brennan, Officer Ryan Brennan's own sister, just 6 months ago. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Brennan, sitting in the witness section, went rigid. Dr. Carter has surgeries scheduled for the next 2 weeks that cannot be rescheduled without risking patient lives. He has 2 children in local schools, a mortgage, and roots in this community that run 20 years deep. Moreover, we have video evidence that this alleged evidence was planted. That's a lie. Brennan erupted from his seat, his face flushed red. Judge Harrison's gavel cracked like thunder. Officer Brennan, you will remain silent or be removed from my courtroom. Your Honor, Walsh tried to regain control. Regardless of the defense's unsubstantiated claims, the fact remains that drugs were found. In a car that was illegally searched, Sarah countered. We have multiple witness videos showing Officer Mills apparently planting something, while Officer Brennan physically assaulted my client. Those videos are inconclusive. Then let's play them for the court. What followed was 20 minutes of legal warfare as the 2 attorneys battled over the admissibility of the cell phone footage. Judge Harrison finally allowed one video to be played. Mrs. Chen's recording, which clearly showed Mills fumbling with something near his pocket before discovering the drugs under a seat that had already been searched. The courtroom was dead silent as the video played. On the screen, Elijah's calm demeanor throughout the encounter was evident, as was Brennan's increasing agitation and eventual violence. "Your Honor," Sarah said when the video ended, "this is a clear case of police misconduct. My client should be released on his own recognizance pending a full investigation." "Your Honor." Brennan stood again, unable to contain himself. "That man is a drug dealer hiding behind a medical degree. I've been doing this job for 15 years, and I know a criminal when I see one. Officer Brennan, I warned you. They all think they're special." Brennan continued, his voice rising. "These people move into our neighborhoods, drive their fancy cars, act like they own the place." "Officer Brennan," Judge Harrison's voice boomed. "One more word and you'll be held in contempt." But Brennan was beyond reason now, beyond control. The mask he'd worn for years, the professional officer just doing his job, had slipped entirely. "You want to let him walk, this drug dealer, this—" What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Brennan moved toward Elijah with the clear intent to harm. But as his fist drew back, Elijah's training kicked in. Without thinking, his body shifted, a micro-movement that would have redirected Brennan's attack and left the officer on the ground. But Elijah caught himself, forced his body to remain still, took the hit. Brennan's fist connected with his jaw, snapping his head back. The courtroom erupted in chaos, bailiffs rushing forward, Amara screaming, Sarah shouting for security. But Elijah just stood there, blood running from his split lip, staring at Brennan with an expression that made the officer step back. "Feel better?" Elijah asked quietly, his voice carrying despite the chaos. It was then that Brennan, perhaps realizing the magnitude of his error, perhaps just consumed by rage, did the unthinkable. His boot lashed out, catching Elijah in the ribs, sending him crashing to the courtroom floor. The crack of impact echoed through the chamber like a judge's gavel pronouncing sentence. But it wasn't just the sound of boot meeting bone. It was the sound of a career ending of justice twisting into something dark and personal. Elijah lay on the polished floor, handcuffs preventing him from cushioning his fall. Blood from his lip pooled beneath his cheek. Through the chaos of shouting voices and rushing feet, his tactical mind cataloged everything. Brennan's heavy breathing, the bailiffs finally restraining the officer, Judge Harrison standing behind his bench in shock, and Amara's voice cutting through it all, not crying but commanding, taking control like the former army nurse she was. "Nobody move him," she ordered, pushing through the bar. "He could have broken ribs. Somebody call an ambulance." Sarah was already on her phone, but not calling for medical help. She was documenting everything, making sure multiple angles were captured, turning the courtroom into a crime scene that would be analyzed for years to come. Judge Harrison found his voice. "Officer Brennan, you are under arrest for assault. Bailiffs, take him into custody immediately." But even as the bailiffs approached, Brennan wasn't done. "You don't understand," he said, his voice strange now, almost pleading. "You don't know who he really is, what he really is. They sent him here. They planted him here." "Officer Brennan, you have the right to remain silent," one of the bailiffs began. "No." Brennan struggled against their grip. "Check his military records. Check what unit he was with. SEALs don't become doctors. They don't just retire and—" The words hung in the air like smoke from a discharged weapon. Elijah, still on the ground, went very still. Sarah's eyes widened. Amara's face went pale. Judge Harrison looked down at Elijah with new interest. "Dr. Carter, are you able to stand?" With dignity that seemed impossible given the circumstances, Elijah rolled to his side, then slowly pushed himself up. His movements were controlled, precise, too precise for a civilian who'd just been assaulted. He stood at attention without meaning to muscle memory from 1,000 formations taking over. "I'm fine, Your Honor." "Are you or have you ever been a member of the United States military, Dr. Carter?" Elijah's jaw worked. Sarah started to object, but he raised a hand slightly, a gesture so commanding that she fell silent immediately. "With respect, Your Honor, that's not relevant to these proceedings. I'll determine what's relevant in my courtroom. Answer the question." For a long moment, Elijah said nothing. Then, with the air of someone making a tactical decision, he spoke. "I served my country from 1995 to 2015. I was medically retired with full honors. I am now a civilian neurosurgeon. That is all you am permitted to say without violating classification protocols." The courtroom went silent. 20 years of service, medical retirement, classification protocols. The math was simple for anyone who knew military culture. 20 years meant career military. Medical retirement with full honors meant combat injuries. Classification protocols meant special operations. "Your Honor," Sarah found her voice, "my client's military service, whatever its nature, has no bearing on the false charges brought against him. If anything, it makes Officer Brennan's assault even more egregious, attacking a decorated veteran in handcuffs in a courtroom in front of a judge." But something had shifted in the room. The crowd's murmur had a different quality now. Respect mixed with curiosity. Brennan had gone pale, perhaps realizing that he'd just publicly assaulted not just a doctor, but a special operations veteran. Judge Harrison sat slowly, his expression thoughtful. "Dr. Carter, given the unusual circumstances of this case and the clear evidence of police misconduct, I'm releasing you on your own recognizance. All charges are suspended pending a full investigation. Officer Brennan, you're remanded into custody pending charges of assault, evidence tampering, and violation of civil rights." "Your Honor," ADA Walsh protested weakly, but Harrison silenced her with a look. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "I'm ordering an immediate investigation into all arrests made by Officer Brennan in the past 5 years. Court is adjourned." The gavel came down with finality. As the bailiffs removed his handcuffs, Elijah rubbed his wrists, the compass tattoo, now visible to those close enough to see. Amara was there instantly, checking his injuries with professional efficiency, even as tears ran down her face. "How bad?" she asked. "2 cracked ribs, maybe 3. Nothing displaced. I've had worse." She laughed through her tears, a sound that was half relief, half frustration. "Of course you have. 20 years and you still can't just let someone help you." Sarah approached carefully. "Elijah, we need to talk about what just happened. Brennan knew something about your service. That's not random." "Later," Elijah said, his eyes finding Brennan being led away in handcuffs. The officer was muttering to himself, words lost in the chaos of the dispersing courtroom. "Right now, I just want to go home." But even as he said it, Elijah knew home would have to wait. His phone returned with his personal effects, was already buzzing with calls from numbers he didn't recognize. One area code made his blood run cold. 71, Arlington, Virginia, Pentagon territory. He answered the third call, stepping up from Amara and Sarah. "Commander Carter." The voice was young, official, nervous. "I'm retired. It's Dr. Carter now." "Sir, I'm Lieutenant Morrison from Naval Special Warfare Command. We've been monitoring the situation. Admiral Stevens wants to speak with you immediately." Admiral Richard Stevens, Elijah's former commanding officer. The man who'd signed off on missions that never officially happened. the keeper of secrets that could reshape history books. Tell the Admiral I'm handling this as a civilian matter. Sir, with respect, Officer Brennan has been making inquiries into classified operations. He's accessed databases he shouldn't even know exist. The Admiral insists. Lieutenant. Elijah cut him off, his voice carrying the same quiet authority that had once commanded the most elite warriors in the world. I said, I'm handling it. If the Admiral wants to discuss it further, he knows where to find me. He ended the call, but the damage was done. Sarah and Amara were both staring at him, with expressions that mixed concern with questions they weren't sure they wanted answered. We need to get you to the hospital, Amara said finally, defaulting to the practical. Those ribs need x-rays. I'll drive, Sarah offered. We can talk on the way. As they left the courthouse, Elijah noticed things he'd trained himself to ignore for 5 years. The security cameras' blind spots, the defensive positions in the architecture, the way certain individuals in the crowd moved with purpose rather than curiosity, watchers who were themselves being watched. Officer Ryan Brennan had kicked over an anthill. But it wasn't just any anthill. He'd disturbed something that connected to networks and operations that spanned continents and decades. The question now wasn't whether Elijah could return to his quiet life as a surgeon. The question was whether that life had ever really been his at all. Outside, Atlanta's afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, but Elijah felt cold. Somewhere in a federal database, flags were being raised. Somewhere in Washington, meetings were being called. And somewhere in a holding cell, Ryan Brennan was about to learn that he'd made the worst mistake of his life, not because he'd planted evidence or assaulted a suspect, but because he'd forced a warrior to remember who he really was. The Mercedes had been returned to the hospital parking lot, still dusted with fingerprint powder. As Amara helped him into the passenger seat, wincing at the pain in his ribs, Elijah caught sight of his reflection in the side mirror. Split lip, developing bruise on his jaw, the exhaustion of the past 24 hours etched into every line. But his eyes were different. Alert. Calculating. The eyes of Commander Carter, not Dr. Carter. You okay? Amara asked, settling into the driver's seat. Yeah, he lied, knowing she'd see through it, but would give him the space to process. 20 years of marriage to a special operator, even one she'd thought was just a regular Navy officer, had taught her when to push and when to wait. As they drove toward Emory Hospital, Elijah's phone continued to buzz. Unknown numbers, military prefixes, even one international call he recognized as coming from Coronado, California, home of Naval Special Warfare Command. Each ring was a reminder that some doors once opened could never fully close. Brennan had wanted to prove that Elijah didn't belong in his white-collar world, that beneath the medical degree and suburban success was something that didn't fit. He'd been right about one thing: Elijah wasn't just a doctor. But Brennan had been wrong about everything else. Because men like Elijah didn't become doctors in spite of their warrior past. They became healers because they'd seen enough breaking to value the fixing. They saved lives because they'd taken them. They pursued peace because they'd mastered war. The hospital appeared ahead, its gleaming towers a monument to healing and hope. Soon Elijah would be back in his scrubs, back in his OR, back in the life he'd built from the ashes of his military career. But something had changed in that courtroom. A seal had been broken, pun bitterly intended. As they pulled into the emergency entrance, Elijah made a decision. He'd handle the x-rays, the police reports, the legal proceedings. He'd return to his surgeries and his patients. But he'd also make a call to Admiral Stevens. Because if Brennan had accessed classified databases, if he'd somehow connected Dr. Elijah Carter to Commander Elijah Carter of SEAL Team 6, then this was bigger than just one racist cop with a grudge. This was about national security. about protected identities, about operations that had shaped global politics from the shadows. And if Elijah had learned anything from 20 years in special operations, it was this: the only way out was through. The emergency room at Emory Hospital fell silent when Elijah walked through the automatic doors. Word had already spread: the viral courtroom videos, the assault, the revelation about his military past that nobody had suspected. Nurses who'd worked alongside him for years stared as if seeing him for the first time. Dr. Patricia Winters, the chief of staff, was waiting with a wheelchair that Elijah waved off. "Don't be stubborn," Patricia said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd run trauma units in 3 different states. "You're my patient now, not my colleague." "Patricia, I'm fine. Just need some imaging to confirm what I already know. 2, maybe 3 cracked ribs, no displacement, no pneumothorax risk. Humor me." She gestured to the wheelchair again. "The last thing we need is our head of neurosurgery collapsing in the hallway because he was too proud to accept help." Amar's hand on his shoulder settled the debate. He sat feeling every one of his 48 years as Patricia personally wheeled him to radiology, bypassing the usual emergency room chaos. "The entire hospital saw the video," Patricia said quietly as they moved through the corridors. "Ryan Brennan kicking you while you were handcuffed on the courtroom floor. I've already had 3 board members call asking if we need to pursue civil action on the hospital's behalf." "That won't be necessary. Elijah, he assaulted you, in public, in front of a judge, because you're black and successful and he couldn't stand it." "I know what he did and why he did it," Elijah replied, his voice carrying an edge that made Patricia glance down at him. "But this has become something bigger than just racial prejudice. Let me handle it my way." The X-ray technician, a young man named David, who'd always been chatty during their previous professional interactions, worked in nervous silence. The images confirmed what Elijah's pain had already told him: 3 cracked ribs on the right side, clean breaks, that would heal on their own with time and rest. 6 weeks minimum before you're cleared for surgery, Patricia said, reviewing the films. "The liability alone—" "4 weeks, Elijah countered. "I can work with pain. I've done it before." Patricia studied him with the calculated assessment of someone who'd just realized they'd been working alongside a stranger. "When you say you've done it before, you're not talking about pulling a muscle at the gym, are you?" Before Elijah could respond, Sarah Chen burst through the examination room door, her usually immaculate appearance disheveled from running. "We have a problem. Brennan made bail." "What?" Amara stood so fast she knocked over a medical tray. "He assaulted Elijah in front of a judge. How does someone make bail for that?" "Police union lawyer. They're claiming temporary insanity brought on by PTSD from a previous incident. Apparently Brennan was attacked by a black suspect 5 years ago, and seeing Elijah triggered a traumatic response." "That's bullshit," Elijah said flatly. "Of course it is. But Judge Harrison recused himself after the incident, and the emergency bail hearing went to Judge Rothschild, who's known for being sympathetic to law enforcement. Brennan's out with an ankle monitor and orders to stay away from you." Elijah's phone buzzed. Another 571 area code. This time, he recognized the number, a direct line he'd been told to forget 5 years ago. "I need to take this," he said, stepping into the hallway despite Patricia's protests about his ribs. "Commander Carter." The voice was older now, gravelly, with 2 more decades of cigarettes despite naval regulations. Admiral Richard Stevens had never been one for following rules that inconvenienced him. "Admiral, I told your lieutenant—" "I know what you told him. Now shut up and listen. Brennan didn't just access classified databases. He's been in contact with Viktor Kozlov." The name hit Elijah like ice water. Viktor Kozlov, former Spetsnaz turned arms dealer, turned information broker. A man who'd love nothing more than to identify and locate former members of SEAL Team 6, especially one who'd been instrumental in disrupting his operations across 3 continents. How? We're still figuring that out. But Brennan's financial records show deposits that don't match his salary. Large ones. Starting about 6 months ago, right around the time you performed surgery on Senator Morrison's son. Senator Morrison, chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Someone who would absolutely have mentioned his son's brilliant neurosurgeon by name in secured facilities where the wrong ears might be listening. Admiral, if Kozlov knows my location, he knows more than that. He knows about Amara, about your children. Brennan was supposed to arrest you, discredit you, get you into the system where you'd be vulnerable. When that failed, he lost control. Elijah's hand found the wall, steadying himself against more than just physical pain. My family, already secured. I've had a team watching them since Brennan accessed the first database 3 days ago. Your son's school, your daughter's dance studio, your wife's clinic, all covered. You've had people watching my family for 3 days and didn't think to warn me. Would you have believed me? Would you have accepted protection? You made it very clear 5 years ago that Commander Carter was dead, and Dr. Carter wanted no contact with his former life. The Admiral was right, which made Elijah even angrier. He would have dismissed any warning as paranoia, would have refused any protection as unnecessary. It had taken Brennan's public assault to crack the careful walls between his 2 lives. What do you need from me? Elijah asked, already knowing he wouldn't like the answer. Come in. Voluntarily. Let us debrief you, update your security protocols, ensure your family's safety properly, instead of from the shadows. And if I refuse, then we do it anyway, just messier and more public. Elijah, you know how this works. The moment Kozlov acquired your current identity, you became an active security concern. We can do this quietly, preserving your medical career and civilian life, or we can do it officially, which would involve federal marshals and witness protection, and the end of everything you've built in Atlanta. Through the examination room window, Elijah could see Amara talking with Sarah, her hands moving animatedly as she made some point about legal strategy. She'd followed him from base to base for 15 years, thinking he was just another naval officer, never knowing about the missions that had taken him into the darkest corners of the world. When he'd finally told her a fraction of the truth, that he'd been in special operations, that his retirement was medical, but classified, she'd accepted it with the same grace she'd accepted every other challenge in their marriage. But this was different. This would drag her fully into a world she'd never asked to be part of. I need 24 hours, Elijah said, to arrange coverage for my patients, to talk to my family. You have 12. A car will be at your house at 0600. Come alone. We'll handle your family's security separately. Admiral. But the line was already dead. When Elijah returned to the examination room, 3 sets of eyes turned to him, with expressions that said they'd heard enough through the thin walls to be worried. That sounded serious, Sarah said carefully. It is. Elijah sat gingerly on the examination table, his ribs protesting every movement. The situation with Brennan is more complicated than we thought. He's been taking money from someone with a grudge against me. Someone from my past. Military past, Amara asked, though it wasn't really a question. Yeah. Dangerous. Very. Amara nodded once, the same way she'd nodded when he'd told her about deployments he couldn't discuss to places he couldn't name. What do we need to do? You and the kids need to leave town for a few days. Maybe visit your sister in Chicago. Like hell. The profanity was so unexpected from Amara that even Patricia blinked in surprise. We're not running. We're not hiding. And we're definitely not splitting up. Whatever this is, we face it together. Amara, the people involved, they don't care about laws or borders or civilian status. They threatened our family. Amara's voice had gone deadly quiet. They used a racist cop to come after you, and when that didn't work, they're going to escalate. Possibly. Sarah cleared her throat. I feel like I'm missing significant context here, but from a legal standpoint, if there's a credible threat, we need to involve the FBI. Already involved, Elijah said, which wasn't entirely true, but would be soon enough. This is being handled at levels way above local law enforcement. Elijah. Patricia had been quiet throughout the exchange, but now she fixed him with the same look she used on difficult patients. What are you not telling us? And don't say it's classified. You're in my ER with broken ribs from an assault that's all over social media. The time for secrets has passed. Elijah looked at the three women who'd become the pillars of his civilian life. His wife, his lawyer, his colleague. Each deserved the truth, but the truth could put them in danger. Knowledge was vulnerability in the world he'd tried to leave behind. From 1995 to 2015, I was a Navy SEAL, he began slowly. Not just any SEAL, I was part of DevGru, what the media calls SEAL Team 6, the unit that doesn't officially exist and conducts operations that never officially happen. The room was silent, except for the distant sounds of the hospital beeping monitors, rolling gurneys, the constant motion of saving lives. I specialized in high-value target extraction and elimination. I led teams into places where America officially had no presence, doing things that will never be in history books. I was very good at it. Too good, maybe. I made enemies not just of the people we targeted, but of their associates, their families, their networks. He paused, gathering thoughts he'd never planned to speak aloud. 5 years ago, I was wounded during an operation in Syria. Traumatic brain injury from an IED, among other things. The irony wasn't lost on me, a brain injury making me unfit for combat, but pushing me toward neurosurgery once I recovered. The Navy gave me a medical retirement with full honors and a new identity strong enough to pass most background checks, but not so deep that it would raise suspicions. Elijah Carter is your real name? Amara asked. It is now. Has been for 5 years. Before that? He shrugged. Before that doesn't matter. What matters is that someone from my past has found me. They're using Brennan probably without him fully understanding who he's working for. And now that Brennan's attack has gone viral, my face is everywhere. Even with 5 years of aging and civilian life, facial recognition will eventually match Dr. Carter to Commander Carter. Jesus, Sarah breathed. This is witness protection level stuff. Beyond that, witness protection is for people who testify then disappear. I'm someone who knows operational details about missions that shaped global politics. Someone who could, if compromised, reveal intelligence that would get assets killed and destroy international relationships. Patricia stood abruptly. I'm calling security. The hospital needs to know if there's a threat. There's no threat to the hospital, Elijah assured her. These people are professionals. They don't do collateral damage unless it serves their purpose. Their interest is in me, not in where I work. How can you be so calm about this? Patricia demanded. You're talking about international assassins or whatever coming after you, and you're sitting there like we're discussing the weather. Because panic doesn't help, Elijah replied simply. And because I've already run through 17 different scenarios in my head and identified the most likely outcomes. The Admiral, my former CO, has security on my family. I'll be briefed tomorrow on the full extent of the threat. Until then, we proceed with caution, but not paranoia. Amara moved to stand beside him, her hand finding his automatically. When you say security on the family, you mean Marcus and Zara too. Especially them. Teenagers are vulnerable, predictable schedules, social media presence, tendency to ignore safety protocols. They don't even know about your past. They're about to learn. The weight of that statement settled over the room. Elijah had worked so hard to give his children a normal life free from the shadows that had defined his 20s and 30s. Now those shadows were reaching out, threatening to engulf the next generation. Sarah's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, her expression darkening. Brennan's lawyer just filed a countersuit. He's claiming you attacked him first, that the video doesn't show the whole story. He wants $1 million in damages and is pressing for assault charges against you. That's insane, Patricia said. There were dozens of witnesses who saw what happened after Brennan had already lost control. Sarah interrupted. But nobody was recording when the confrontation started. It's his word against Elijah's, and he's a 15-year veteran of the force with commendations. Commendations and 17 complaints, Elijah reminded her. Complaints that were all dismissed or withdrawn. On paper, he's a decorated officer who had a mental break due to PTSD. You're a doctor who, it turns out, is a trained killer with a mysterious past. The phrase trained killer hung in the air like an accusation. It was accurate technically, but it reduced 20 years of service to the worst possible interpretation. I saved lives too, Elijah said quietly. More than I took. Hostage rescues, medical evacuations, protecting civilians in conflict zones. The killing was necessary, but it was never the point. I know, Sarah said, her tone softening. But that's not how Brennan's lawyer will frame it. They'll paint you as dangerous, unstable someone who hid their violent past and infiltrated respectable society. Let them try, Amara said with unexpected venom. Let them stand up in court and try to make Elijah the villain when there's video of Brennan planting evidence and kicking a handcuffed man. I dare them. Her fierce loyalty made Elijah's chest tighten with emotion that had nothing to do with his cracked ribs. This woman had stood by him through deployments and injuries, and the 1,000 small betrayals that military life inflicted on families. She'd earned the right to her anger. A knock on the door interrupted whatever response he might have made. A young resident poked her head in, looking nervous. Dr. Carter. There's someone here to see you. Says he's from the Defense Department. Elijah checked his watch. The Admiral had given him 12 hours. It had been barely 2. Let him in, he said, already knowing this couldn't be good. The man who entered looked like an accountant, medium height, medium build. Forgettable face suit that was nice enough to be respectable but not so nice as to be memorable. Only his eyes gave him away constantly, moving, cataloging exits and threats and possibilities. Dr. Carter, I'm Agent David Park, Defense Intelligence Agency. I'm sorry to interrupt your medical treatment, but there's been a development. What kind of development? Park glanced meaningfully at the others in the room. They stay, Elijah said. Whatever you have to say affects them too. Park hesitated, probably weighing protocols against practicality. Viktor Kozlov entered the country 6 hours ago. Private jet into DeKalb Peachtree Airport. He's traveling under a diplomatic passport from Belarus that we can't challenge without creating an international incident. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. He's here in Atlanta. Amara's voice was steady, but Elijah could see her mind racing, calculating distances from the hospital to their home to the children's schools. We have him under surveillance, but he's making no effort to hide. He checked into the Four Seasons under his own name. He's being brazen about it. He wants me to know he's here, Elijah said, understanding immediately. It's a message. He can reach me whenever he wants, and there's nothing anyone can do to stop him. The Admiral wants you moved to a secure facility immediately. No. Elijah stood despite the protest from his ribs. Running now shows weakness, and it won't solve anything. Kozlov has resources to find me wherever I go. Better to deal with this here on my terms. Dr. Carter, with respect, you're a civilian now. You have no terms. You have no backup, no resources, no authority. I have something better, Elijah interrupted. I have a life worth protecting and an enemy who's underestimated me. Kozlov thinks I've gone soft, that 5 years of surgery and suburban life have dulled my edge. Let him think that. Park looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Elijah's expression stopped him. This was the commander speaking now, the man who'd led impossible missions and brought his teams home alive. The admiral won't approve. The admiral knows better than to try to give me orders I won't follow. Tell him I'll come in tomorrow as agreed, but tonight I'm going home to my family. If Kozlov wants to make a move, let him. I'm done running from shadows. It was bravado partially. His ribs were screaming. He had no weapons, no team, no support structure. But he also had something he'd never had during his military service, something worth losing everything to protect. And that paradoxically made him more dangerous than he'd ever been. Park left with clear reluctance, extracting a promise that Elijah would at least accept a security detail at his house. Sarah departed next, armed with a list of legal preparations and contingencies. Patricia wanted to admit him for observation, but finally accepted that he'd recover better at home, which left just him and Amara in the examination room as the afternoon sun slanted through the windows. "You're scared," she said. It wasn't a question. "Terrified," he admitted. "Not of Kozlov, not of dying, but of you and the kids getting hurt because of my past. We're stronger than you think." She helped him ease into his shirt, gentle with his ribs. "Marcus has your stubbornness, and Zara has your tactical mind, even if she uses it mainly to win debate competitions. And I didn't spend 15 years as a military wife without learning a few things about operational security. This is different. No, it's not. It's just more honest. All those nights you came home with injuries you couldn't explain, missions you couldn't discuss, I knew you were in deeper than regular Navy. I chose not to push because I trusted you to tell me when I needed to know. Well, now I need to know." They made their way slowly through the hospital, Elijah accepting the wheelchair this time to avoid attracting more attention. Every face they passed could be a threat or an ally, the paranoia of his former life seeping back like blood through bandages. Marcus and Zara were waiting in the kitchen when they got home, their faces pale with worry. Someone, probably the security team Admiral Stevens had mentioned, had pulled them from school early. "Dad." Zara rushed to hug him, then pulled back when he winced. Sorry. Are you okay?" "We saw the video, everyone's seen the video. That cop just attacked you for no reason." "There was a reason," Elijah said, carefully easing himself into a kitchen chair. "Just not a good one or a legal one. And it's connected to something I need to tell you both. Something about my past that I'd hoped to never have to share." Marcus, trying to project teenage indifference despite his obvious concern, crossed his arms. "What, like you were in the military?" "We already figured that out, Dad. The way you wake up, sometimes the scars, you never explain the fact that you can't watch war movies without leaving the room. It's pretty obvious." "You knew. Suspected," Zara corrected. "Marcus thought Marines, but I said Navy because of that anchor tattoo you hide on your shoulder blade. We just didn't know it was anything serious." Elijah looked at Amara, who shrugged. "They're your children. Of course they're observant." So he told them. Not everything they didn't need to know about specific missions or the things that still haunted his dreams. But enough. Enough to understand why there were now subtle security improvements around their house, why they might see unfamiliar faces at their schools, why their father, who saved lives in operating rooms, had once taken them in distant deserts. "So you were like Jason Bourne?" Marcus asked, when he'd finished his teenage facade cracking to reveal the scared kid underneath. "No. Jason Bourne was fiction. What I did was real, with real consequences that are now affecting our real lives. This isn't exciting or cool. It's dangerous. But you can handle it, right?" Zara's faith in him was absolute heartbreaking. "You were the best. That's why they're scared of you." "I was very good at a job I no longer do. Now I'm just a doctor with some old skills and older enemies. But yes, we'll handle it. Together. As a family." As if to underscore the point, a subtle knock came at the back door, 3 short, 2 long, military pattern. Elijah recognized it even as his body tensed for threat assessment. "Security detail," Amara said, checking the window. "They want to introduce themselves." The team was professional, unobtrusive, everything Elijah would have selected himself. 3 operators who looked like soccer dads until you noticed how they never quite relaxed, how their positioning always covered multiple angles of approach. Their leader, introducing himself only as Tom, had eyes that had seen too much. "Commander Carter, it's an honor. I studied your Tunisia operation at training. Textbook urban extraction under fire. That was a long time ago. Skills like yours don't fade, sir. Neither do threats like Kozlov. We'll keep your family safe, but the Admiral's right, this ends only one of 2 ways." Elijah knew what he meant. Either Kozlov would be neutralized or Elijah would be. There was no middle ground with men like Viktor Kozlov. No negotiated peace. Just winners and losers, living and dead. As night fell over Atlanta, Elijah stood at his bedroom window, watching the subtle signs of his security detail, a shadow moving wrong in the garden, a car parked where no car should be. His ribs ached with every breath, his body reminding him that he wasn't 25 anymore, wasn't the warrior who could operate for days without sleep or food. But he was something else now, something perhaps more dangerous. He was a man with everything to lose and the skills to prevent that loss. Kozlov had made a critical error, one that many enemies had made before him. He'd threatened Elijah's family. And for that, Commander Carter would come out of retirement one last time. The black SUV arrived at exactly 0600, its engine purring in the pre-dawn darkness, like a predator waiting to strike. Elijah kissed Amara goodbye, promised his children he'd be back by dinner, and walked out into the humid Atlanta morning with the measured steps of a man heading to war. Tom's security team had been on watch all night, their presence visible only in the small signs disturbed dew patterns on the lawn. A neighbor's dog that hadn't barked at its usual time because someone had already calmed it. Professional work that made Elijah nostalgic for the brotherhood he'd left behind. The driver said nothing during the 40-minute ride to Dobbins Air Reserve Base, where a nondescript building housed one of the Defense Intelligence Agency's southeastern operational centers. The facility looked like any other administrative building from the outside, but Elijah recognized the subtle hardening reinforced walls, bullet-resistant glass, concealed defensive positions. A fortress hiding in plain sight. Admiral Stevens was waiting in a conference room that smelled of burnt coffee and tension. 5 years had added more gray to his hair and deeper lines to his face, but his eyes remained sharp as surgical steel. With him were 3 others, Agent Park from yesterday, a woman in Air Force blues with intelligence insignia, and a man whose civilian clothes couldn't disguise his special operations bearing. "Commander Carter," Stevens stood extending his hand. The handshake was firm testing. "You look like hell." "Cracked ribs tend to do that, sir." "Sit. We have a lot to cover and not much time." Stevens gestured to a chair, then activated a screen showing surveillance footage. Victor Kozlov taken 14 hours ago at the Four Seasons Atlanta. He's traveling with a 6-man security detail, all former Spetsnaz, all wanted for various crimes that Belarus refuses to extradite for. The image showed Kozlov entering the hotel lobby with the casual confidence of a tourist. He'd aged well in the 5 years since Elijah had last seen him, through a sniper scope in Syria, silver hair, now instead of black, but the same wolf's eyes, the same predator's economy of movement. "He's not hiding," Elijah observed. "No, he's not. He wants you to know exactly where he is. It's an invitation and a trap." The woman in Air Force blues spoke with a slight Texas accent. "Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Fitzgerald, Air Force Intelligence. I've been tracking Kozlov's financial networks for 3 years. 6 months ago, he started moving significant resources to establish a presence in Atlanta. We thought he was setting up a smuggling route through Hartsfield. We were wrong. He was hunting me. The evidence suggests so, yes. The timing coincides with Senator Morrison's son's surgery. The senator mentioned you by name during a secured briefing about medical assets for potential field operations. Someone in that room leaked your identity to Kozlov. So we have a mole," the unnamed man said, speaking for the first time. His voice carried Australian hints beneath trained American English. "That narrows it down to about 40 people with that level of clearance." Stevens made introductions. "This is Captain Jake Morrison, no relation to the senator. Former Delta Force, now DIA Special Activities. He'll be your liaison if you decide to take direct action." "I'm a civilian," Elijah reminded them. "I don't take direct action anymore. I perform surgery." "About that," Park pulled out a tablet, swiping through documents. "Kozlov's been thorough. He knows about your patient list, your surgical schedule, your research into traumatic brain injury treatments. He's particularly interested in your work with veterans." The final piece clicked into place in Elijah's mind. "He thinks I'm still operational. He thinks the neurosurgery is a cover." "Isn't it?" Morrison asked bluntly. "No, it's my life. It's who I am now." "But you maintained your skills," Fitzgerald observed. "Your hospital records show you use the gym at unusual hours, 0400 most mornings. You've maintained weapons qualifications at a private range under an assumed name. You run tactical scenarios as mental exercises. That's not civilian behavior, Commander. That's an operator staying ready." She was right, and Elijah couldn't deny it. Some part of him had never fully let go, had always been preparing for a moment like this. The call in the night, the enemy at the gate, the return to a world written in blood and bullets. "What does Kozlov want?" Elijah asked, though he suspected he knew. Stevens pulled up another file, photographs of 3 men all dead, all bearing the distinctive precision of professional assassination. These were Kozlov's competition in the arms trade. All 3 were killed by someone using SEAL Team 6 close-quarters combat techniques. Kozlov thinks you've gone freelance, that you're eliminating his rivals to corner the market. That's insane. I haven't left Atlanta in 2 years except for medical conferences. We know that. But from Kozlov's perspective, you're the only operator with the skills and knowledge to pull off these hits who isn't accounted for. Every other member of your unit is either active duty confirmed dead or under surveillance. You disappeared into civilian life just before the killings started. So he came here to what kill me, recruit me. We don't know, Morrison admitted. His movements suggest he's waiting for something, or someone. The room fell silent as the implications settled. Kozlov was playing a game whose rules only he knew, using Elijah's family as bait to draw him into the open. The assault by Brennan had been meant to put Elijah in the system vulnerable and exposed. When that failed, Kozlov had decided on a more direct approach. "There's something else," Park said reluctantly. "Officer Brennan was found dead this morning." The words hit like a physical blow. What? How? Suicide, apparently. Single gunshot, his service weapon. He left a note confessing to taking bribes to target successful black professionals, though he didn't name his employer. The media is calling it guilt over yesterday's assault. Kozlov cleaned up his loose end, Morrison said flatly. Brennan became a liability the moment he lost control in that courtroom. Elijah thought of Brennan racist, corrupt, violent, but ultimately just a tool used and discarded by more dangerous men. There was no sympathy for the man who'd tried to destroy his life, but there was a cold anger at Kozlov for orchestrating all of it. So what's the play? Elijah asked, falling back into military terminology without thinking. We can't arrest him, diplomatic immunity. Can't assassinate him without causing an international incident. Can't ignore him because he won't go away. There's a fourth option, Stevens said carefully. We make you disappear. New identity, new location, complete extraction from your current life. Your family too. Start over somewhere Kozlov can't find you. No. The word came out harder than intended. I'm not running. I'm not giving up the life I built, the career I love, the community I serve. And I'm definitely not teaching my children that the solution to bullies is to run and hide. Then we need another solution, Fitzgerald said, because Kozlov won't leave without resolution. Men like him don't give up, don't get discouraged, don't forget. He'll keep coming until he gets what he wants or dies trying. Or until I stop him. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Everyone in the room understood what Elijah was suggesting, even if none of them wanted to acknowledge it directly. You're a civilian, Stevens reminded him, though his tone suggested he was going through the motions rather than believing it. You can't engage in offensive operations on American soil. I won't have to. Kozlov will come to me. He's too proud to do otherwise. All I have to do is be ready when he does. Morrison leaned forward. And if he comes after your family instead, he won't. Elijah's certainty surprised even him. Kozlov's old-school Soviet training, rigid honor codes. He'll want to face me directly, prove he's superior. Using my family would be admission that he can't beat me straight up. His ego won't allow it. That's a hell of a gamble. It's an educated assessment based on 20 years of studying men like him. Kozlov needs to prove something to himself, to his associates, maybe to whoever's pulling his strings. Killing me from a distance or through proxies won't satisfy that need. Stevens stood pacing to the window that looked out over nothing but Georgia pine forest. What do you need from us? Intelligence, real-time surveillance on Kozlov and his team. And when the time comes, plausible deniability. You're asking us to let you operate as a vigilante. I'm asking you to let me defend myself and my family with whatever force proves necessary. There's a difference. The Admiral turned back, his expression unreadable. You have 48 hours. If Kozlov hasn't made a move by then, we implement extraction protocols whether you agree or not. Agent Park will be your contact. Captain Morrison will provide tactical support, if needed strictly unofficially. And if Kozlov does make a move, then Commander Carter tragically died 5 years ago in Syria, and Dr. Carter defended himself against a violent criminal with skills learned through completely legitimate civilian self-defense training. It was as close to permission as Elijah was going to get. He stood his ribs, protesting the movement. I need to get back. I have patients this afternoon. You're going back to work. Fitzgerald's surprise was evident. With everything that's happening, if I break routine, Kozlov knows he's gotten to me. Besides, I have a 7-year-old girl recovering from brain surgery who needs to see that her doctor is still there, still fighting for her. Morrison stood as well. I'll ride back with you. We need to discuss contingencies. The ride back to Atlanta was filled with the kind of planning Elijah had hoped never to do again: fields of fire extraction routes, weapons placement, rules of engagement. Morrison was thorough professional and clearly skeptical that a doctor who hadn't seen combat in 5 years could handle a threat like Kozlov. "When was your last live fire exercise?" Morrison asked as they neared the city. "Tuesday. Every Tuesday for 5 years. Muscle memory isn't the same as combat readiness." "No," Elijah agreed, "but righteous fury makes up for a lot of lost steps. This man threatened my children. There's no rust on that kind of motivation." Morrison studied him for a long moment. "You know, I read your file. The classified one, not the sanitized version. Tunisia, Yemen, Assyria, what you did was extraordinary. But that was Commander Carter. Are you sure Dr. Carter can do what needs to be done?" Dr. Carter has spent 5 years inside human bodies, understanding exactly where every vital organ sits, how every system connects, how much pressure it takes to stop a heart or burst an artery. If anything, I'm more dangerous now than I was then. The question isn't whether I can do what needs to be done. It's whether I can live with myself afterward. They parted ways at the hospital, Morrison disappearing into the crowd, while Elijah made his way to his office. Patricia Winters was waiting along with what looked like half the surgical department. "We wanted to make sure you were okay," Patricia said, though her eyes were assessing him for more than physical damage. "The news about Officer Brennan, it's all over the media." "I heard. It's tragic." Elijah kept his voice neutral, professional. "But it doesn't change anything for us here. We have patients to treat, lives to save." Elijah, Dr. James Crawford, head of cardiac surgery, and one of Elijah's few close friends at the hospital, stepped forward. "If you need time, we can cover your surgeries. No one would blame you for stepping back after what you've been through." "What I've been through is a racist cop trying to destroy my life and failing. Taking time off would suggest he succeeded. I'm fine, my hands are steady, and my patients need me. Business as usual." But it wasn't business as usual. As Elijah made his rounds, he noticed the subtle changes: security guards who weren't quite hospital security, new faces in the hallways, who moved like operators rather than medical staff, cameras that hadn't been there yesterday. Admiral Stevens was keeping his word about protection, even if it made the hospital feel more like a forward operating base than a place of healing. The little girl with the brain injury was awake when he reached her room. Maria Santos, 7 years old, with huge brown eyes and a smile that could light up the pediatric ward despite the bandages wrapped around her head. "Dr. Elijah," she said, her voice small but excited. "You came back. I promised I would, didn't I?" He sat carefully on the edge of her bed, letting her see that he was injured too, that doctors could be patient sometimes. "How are you feeling?" "My head hurts, but not as bad as yesterday. Mama says you fixed my brain." "I helped it fix itself. Your brain did most of the work." He checked her pupils, her reflexes, all the small signs that told him the surgery had been successful. "You're going to be just fine, Maria." "The nurse said someone hurt you," Maria said, with the directness only children could manage. "She said a bad man attacked you because you're a hero." "I'm not a hero, I'm just a doctor." "Mama says doctors are heroes. She says you saved my life." Mrs. Santos, who'd been sitting quietly in the corner, spoke up. "We saw the video, Dr. Carter. What that police officer did, it was horrible. But the way you stood there, took it without fighting back, that was heroic." If only she knew how hard it had been not to fight back, not to let 20 years of combat training take over. If only she knew that the restraint had been more difficult than any mission he'd ever run. "I need to continue my rounds," Elijah said, standing carefully. "Maria, you rest. I'll check on you again tomorrow." Promise? Promise. As he left the pediatric ward, his phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number. Just an address, a warehouse in an industrial district on the outskirts of Atlanta. No explanation, no threat, but Elijah knew immediately what it meant. Kozlov was done waiting. He called Morrison first. "I just got an invitation." "We saw. That warehouse has been abandoned for 3 years. Kozlov's team scouted it this morning. It's isolated, no civilian foot traffic, limited surveillance coverage. Perfect for a meet that nobody wants on record. Or perfect for an ambush. That too. You're not actually considering going?" "Of course I am. This is what we wanted Kozlov making the first move. We wanted him to make a move we could counter, not walk you into a kill box. Every battlefield is a kill box until you control it." The old confidence was coming back, the certainty that had carried him through impossible missions. "How long do I have?" The message came from a burner phone, but based on Kozlov's movements, you have maybe 4 hours before he expects you. 4 hours. Enough time to prepare, not enough time to overthink. Perfect. "I need equipment," Elijah said. "Nothing traceable, nothing official. Already ahead of you. There's a storage unit 2 blocks from your hospital. Unit 47. Keys under a rock by the door. Everything you might need is inside." "Morrison, if this goes bad," "It won't. Because you're not going alone. I'll have Overwatch, and there's a QRF standing by if things get loud. You may be retired commander, but you're still one of us. We don't leave our own hanging." The storage unit was a shrine to tactical precision. Body armor that looked civilian, but would stop anything short of armor-piercing rounds. Communications equipment that could reach satellites or whisper across a room. And weapons, beautiful, terrible weapons that felt like coming home when Elijah picked them up. He chose carefully. A Glock 19 for concealment. A combat knife that had saved his life in Yemen, and a small tactical kit with everything from flex cuffs to field medical supplies. Not enough to fight a war, but enough to win a battle. The warehouse district was exactly as Morrison had described. Abandoned, isolated, the kind of place where violence could happen without witnesses. Kozlov had chosen well. The building itself was massive, a former textile factory that had died with American manufacturing, leaving behind only rust and broken dreams. Elijah parked 3 blocks away and approached on foot, every sense hyper-alert. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows between the buildings, each one a potential hiding spot for Kozlov's men. But the approaches were clear, the Overwatch positions empty. Either Kozlov was supremely confident, or this really was just a conversation. The main door was open, an invitation and a challenge. Elijah entered with his weapon drawn but lowered, ready but not aggressive. The interior was vast machinery, shadows, creating a maze of metal and darkness. And there, in a pool of sunlight from a broken skylight, sat Viktor Kozlov at a folding table with 2 chairs like he was waiting for a chess partner. "Commander Carter," Kozlov's English was accented but precise. "Or do you prefer Doctor now? Either works." Elijah approached slowly, checking angles, mapping exits. "Though I'm curious how you found me." "Please sit. We have much to discuss." Kozlov gestured to the empty chair. Up close, he looked older than his 61 years, worn by a life of violence and paranoia. "Finding you was not difficult once I knew to look. A SEAL of your caliber doesn't just disappear. You leave ripples the way you move, the way you think, the way you save lives, with the same precision you once took them." "What do you want, Kozlov?" "Direct. So American." "Very well. I want to hire you." Whatever Elijah had expected, it wasn't that. "Hire me for what?" "To kill me." The warehouse fell silent, except for the distant sound of traffic and the closer sound of pigeons in the rafters. Kozlov's expression was serious, almost sad. "You're dying," Elijah said. Seeing it now, the subtle tremor in the left hand, the careful way Kozlov moved his head, the slight drag in his speech. "Parkinson's, no brain tumor. Inoperable. Glioblastoma multiforme. Stage 4. The doctors give me 3 months, maybe 6. But you know what that means, the slow deterioration, the loss of control, the indignity of dying by degrees. So you want to go out on your own terms. I want to go out as I lived as a warrior, facing an equal, maybe a superior." Kozlov leaned back, studying Elijah with those wolf's eyes. "I've researched you thoroughly, Commander. Your operations in Tunisia, Yemen, Syria, artwork, really. Precise, efficient, elegant even. If I must die, I want it to be at the hands of an artist. I'm not an assassin for hire. No, you're not. Which is why I had to motivate you. The officer Brennan, a necessary tool to bring you into the open. His death regrettable but also necessary. He knew too much and had become unstable. You killed him. I had him killed. There's a difference. Just as there's a difference between dying in a hospital bed and dying in combat. One is surrender. The other is honor. And if I refuse," Kozlov smiled, the expression not reaching his eyes, "then I continue my original plan. Your family remains under threat, not from me directly, you were right about my codes, but from the men who will fight to take my place when I'm gone. They know about you now, know you're here unprotected by your government, vulnerable. My death is inevitable. The question is whether it happens cleanly privately or whether it becomes a public spectacle that draws every enemy you've ever made to Atlanta." It was a masterful trap. Kozlov had turned his own death into a weapon aimed directly at everything Elijah held dear. "When?" Elijah asked. "Tonight. Midnight. Here. Just you and me. No witnesses, no interference. If you win when you win, you take my phone call, the number marked insurance, and say the word resolved. That will trigger payments to all my associates, confirming that our business is concluded and that you're under my protection posthumously. It will also delete all records of your current identity from my networks. And if I lose, then you die as Commander Carter, not Dr. Carter, and your family gets the same protection. I've already made the arrangements. How do I know you'll keep your word? Because, Commander, we are both men of honor in our own ways. I've killed many people, but I've never broken my word. Can you say the same?" Elijah stood, decision made. Midnight. No guns that would attract attention. Blades only. Agreed. Kozlov stood as well, and for a moment Elijah saw the warrior he'd been: tall, powerful, deadly. The tumor hadn't taken that, not yet. "It will be an honor to die by your hand, Commander Carter. The honor would be in not having to kill at all." "Yes," Kozlov agreed sadly. "But that's not the world we live in, is it?" Elijah left the warehouse with 6 hours to prepare for something he'd thought he'd never do again: kill a man in close combat. But this was different from his missions. This wasn't about orders or national security or abstract greater goods. This was about a dying man's last request and protecting his family from future threats. He called Amara from the car. "I'll be late tonight. Something came up with a patient." "The girl Maria, is she okay?" "She's fine. This is something else. I'll explain when I get home." "Elijah." Her voice carried all the weight of 20 years together. "Whatever you're about to do, come back to me. Come back to us. Always." Morrison was waiting at the storage unit when Elijah arrived. "We monitored everything. This is insane, you know that, right? It's the cleanest solution. Kozlov dies on his terms, my family gets protected, no international incidents, no collateral damage. You're talking about executing a man. I'm talking about euthanizing a dying man who's chosen his exit strategy. There's a difference. Morrison handed him a knife, not the one from the storage unit, but something special. A SEAL Team 6 combat blade, the kind given only to operators who'd completed certain classified missions. This was yours, from Tunisia. Stevens had it in storage. The knife felt perfect in Elijah's hand, balanced and familiar like an old friend. He'd carried it through 3 continents, used it to save lives and take them. Now it would serve one final purpose. You don't have to do this, Morrison said. We can take Kozlov down other ways. No, we can't. Not without risking exposure, retaliation, escalation. This ends tonight clean and final. The hours passed too quickly. Elijah went home, had dinner with his family, helped Zara with her debate. Preparation, watched Marcus play video games. Normal things, precious things, things worth killing to protect. He didn't tell them where he was going when he left at 11:30. Just another medical emergency requiring his attention. The warehouse was different at night, shadows, deeper silence complete. Kozlov was already there, dressed in black tactical gear that probably cost more than most people's cars. He'd cleared a space in the center of the main floor, lit by battery-powered work lights that created an arena of brightness in the darkness. You came, Kozlov said, though he didn't sound surprised. Did you think I wouldn't? I thought Dr. Carter might override Commander Carter. I'm glad I was wrong. They faced each other in the circle of light, 2 warriors at the end of their journeys. Kozlov drew his knife, a Spetsnaz ballistic blade, spring-loaded and deadly. Elijah drew his SEAL knife, the weight of history in his hand. Any last words? Elijah asked. Yes. Your patient, Maria Santos. Her surgery was elegant. You saved her life with the same precision you're about to take mine. There's poetry in that. You researched my patients. I researched everything. It's how I know you're the right man for this final task. Now, Commander, show me why SEAL Team 6 is legendary. Kozlov moved first, faster than a dying man should be able to move. The Spetsnaz blade whispered through the air, where Elijah's throat had been a moment before. But Elijah was already turning his body, remembering patterns drilled into muscle and bone through thousands of hours of training. The fight was brutal and beautiful, a deadly dance between 2 masters of their craft. Kozlov's Soviet training showed in his economy of movement, his patience, his willingness to trade damage for position. Elijah's SEAL training was more fluid, adaptive, using the environment as a weapon. They carved pieces from each other. Kozlov's blade finding Elijah's shoulder, Elijah's knife painting a red line across Kozlov's ribs. Both men bled, breathed hard, but neither gave ground. It was the kind of fight that would be studied in special operations schools, if anyone had been recording it. Finally, inevitably, the tumor betrayed Kozlov. A momentary tremor in his left hand, a slight delay in his response time. Elijah saw the opening and took it, his blade sliding between ribs to find the heart with surgical precision. Kozlov dropped his knife hands, going to the wound that both men knew was fatal. He sank to his knees, looking up at Elijah with something like gratitude. Perfect, he whispered. Call the number. Say, resolved. Protect your family. Why? Elijah asked, kneeling beside his dying enemy. Why all of this? Because Kozlov's voice was fading. A warrior deserves a warrior's death, and a healer deserves to heal without looking over his shoulder. You gave me the first. I give you the second. Viktor Kozlov died at 12:47 a.m. in an abandoned warehouse in Atlanta, Georgia. He died on his terms by his choice at the hands of an equal. There was honor in that, even if there was no glory. Elijah made the call, said the word heard, the confirmation that all records would be purged, all threats neutralized. Then he called Morrison. It's done. We know. We've been monitoring. Cleanup team is en route. Go home, Commander. Go home to your family. But first, Elijah sat with Kozlov's body, two warriors sharing a final moment of silence. Tomorrow, Dr. Carter would return to the hospital, save lives, heal the broken. Commander Carter would fade back into memory, hopefully forever this time. The war was over. The healing could begin. Elijah drove home through empty Atlanta streets, his shoulder burning where Kozlov's blade had found its mark, his hands steady on the wheel despite the adrenaline still coursing through his veins. The cleanup team had arrived within minutes, efficient ghosts, who would ensure that Viktor Kozlov simply vanished from the world, another casualty of the shadow wars that never made headlines. The house was dark except for the kitchen light Amara always left on when he worked late. But she was awake sitting at the kitchen table with 2 cups of tea, wearing the old navy sweatshirt she'd claimed from his closet 15 years ago and never returned. "You're bleeding," she said, not a question, but an observation, her nurse's eyes catching what others might miss. "It's superficial." "Let me see." She was already moving, getting the medical kit they kept stocked better than some emergency rooms. Her hands were gentle but thorough as she cleaned the wound, her silence more eloquent than any interrogation. "He's dead," Elijah said finally. "The threat's over." "The immediate threat," Amara corrected, applying butterfly closures with practiced ease. "But this won't be the last time, will it? Your past isn't something that just goes away because one man dies." "No," he admitted. "But Kozlov's death sends a message. Commander Carter is off limits. Dr. Carter and his family are protected. By a dead man's promise. By the fear of what happens to those who break that promise. Kozlov may be gone, but his reputation isn't. Anyone who comes after us now would be violating his final orders. In that world, that's a death sentence." She finished bandaging his shoulder, then surprised him by wrapping her arms around him from behind, careful of his injuries. "I married a warrior," she whispered. "I knew it even when you couldn't tell me. I've made my peace with it. But our children, they didn't sign up for this." "I know. That's why it had to end tonight." "Did it end? Or did it just pause?" Elijah turned in her arms, seeing the fear she'd been hiding, the strength it had taken to send him off to kill a man while maintaining normalcy for their children. "I don't know," he said honestly. "But I promise you this, I will do everything in my power to keep our family safe and our life intact. That's all I can ask for." She kissed him softly, tasting like chamomile tea, and home. "Come to bed. Tomorrow you have to be Dr. Carter again." But sleep wouldn't come easily. Elijah lay awake feeling every one of his 48 years in his bones, cataloging injuries old and new, while Amara's breathing deepened beside him. Through their bedroom window, he could see one of Tom's security team making rounds, a shadow protecting shadows. Morning came too soon, bringing with it the familiar ritual of preparation for surgery. His shoulder protested as he scrubbed in, but his hands remained steady. In the OR, he could forget everything else: Kozlov's dying words, Brennan's rage, the weight of 20 years of violence. Here he was, purely a healer, navigating the delicate landscape of the human brain with the same precision he'd once used to navigate hostile territory. The day's first surgery was routine, removing a benign tumor from a 43-year-old teacher who'd been having seizures. As Elijah worked, he found himself thinking about the strange symmetry of it all. Kozlov had died from a brain tumor. This woman would live because hers could be removed. Death and life separated by skill and circumstance and the random cruelty of cellular mutation. Beautiful work as always, Dr. Carter, his resident Dr. Kim Park said as they closed. That approach to the speech center was textbook perfect. Textbook perfect gets people killed, Elijah replied automatically, then caught himself. That was Commander Carter talking, not Dr. Carter. In surgery, I mean. Every brain is different. You have to adapt to what you find, not what you expect. After the surgery, he found Sarah Chen waiting in his office, her expression grim. We need to talk about the Brennan situation. What situation? Brennan's dead. Exactly. Suicide the day after he publicly assaults you. The media is having a field day. Some are saying you drove him to it. Others are suggesting something more sinister. Let them suggest what they want. I was home with my family when he died. I know that. You know that. But the court of public opinion doesn't care about facts. She pulled out her tablet, showing him headlines from various news sites. Local hero doctor targeted by corrupted cop. Brennan's death raises questions about police corruption. And worst of all, who is the real Dr. Elijah Carter? That last one made his blood run cold. What are they saying? Nothing specific yet. Just that your military record is surprisingly thin for someone who supposedly served 20 years. They're digging Elijah. And eventually someone's going to dig deep enough to hit classified information. Then they'll hit a wall. My real records are sealed at levels most journalists can't even imagine exist. Maybe. But what about the court case? The drug charges are still technically pending. I thought the judge dismissed them. Suspended them pending investigation. With Brennan dead, that investigation just got complicated. The DEA is involved now, internal affairs, even the FBI, given the civil rights violations. You're going to be under a microscope for months. Before Elijah could respond, his phone buzzed with a number he recognized, Patricia Winter's direct line. Elijah, I need you in my office. Now. The walk to the Chief of Staff's office felt longer than usual, every colleague's glance potentially hiding suspicion or judgment. When he arrived, Patricia wasn't alone. A man in an expensive suit sat across from her desk, his posture suggesting legal authority. Dr. Carter, this is Jonathan Blackwood from the hospital's legal department. We need to discuss your situation. My situation, the media attention, the ongoing investigation, the questions about your background. Patricia's expression was sympathetic but firm. The board is concerned. Concerned about what exactly? Blackwood spoke with the measured tones of someone who billed by the hour. Dr. Carter, while we absolutely support you and believe in your innocence regarding the drug charges, we have to consider the hospital's reputation. Parents trust us with their children's lives. If there's even a suggestion that our head of neurosurgery might be involved in something illegal, I'm not involved in anything illegal. We know that. But perception matters. The board is requesting that you take a temporary leave of absence, with pay, of course, just until this situation resolves. The words hit harder than Kozlov's knife. You're suspending me. Not suspending, Patricia said quickly. Think of it as medical leave. You have injured ribs, you've been through a traumatic experience. No one would question you taking time to recover. My patients would question it. Maria Santos would question it when the doctor who saved her life suddenly disappears. Dr. Crawford can take over your cases. No. The word came out with command authority, making both administrators straighten. I have 17 patients in various stages of recovery, 5 more scheduled for surgery this week. You want me to abandon them because the media is asking questions. Elijah. Patricia's voice softened. This isn't about abandoning anyone. It's about protecting the hospital. From what? From me, I've been here 7 years. I've saved hundreds of lives, brought in millions in research grants, trained the next generation of neurosurgeons. And now, because one corrupt cop tried to frame me and had the bad judgment to kill himself, I'm suddenly a liability. Blackwood cleared his throat. There's also the matter of your military service. The board has questions about the gaps in your record, the classified nature of your retirement. In light of recent events, you've remembered that I'm black. The truth of it hung in the air, like smoke from a fired weapon. When I was just Dr. Carter saving lives and making the hospital look good, nobody cared about my background. But now that there's controversy, suddenly my military service is suspicious. That's not, Patricia started, isn't it? How many white doctors on staff have military backgrounds you've never questioned? How many have gaps in their history you've never investigated? But I get arrested on false charges by a racist cop, and suddenly I'm the threat. His phone buzzed again. This time it was Morrison, with a message that made everything else fade to background noise. Kozlov's associates want a meeting. Tonight. They have questions about his death. So much for the clean ending he'd hoped for. I need to go, Elijah said, standing despite his ribs' protest. Elijah, we're not finished. Yes, we are. If the board wants to fire me, they can do it officially. Otherwise, I have patients to see. He paused at the door. And Jonathan, you might want to research whistleblower protections and discrimination lawsuits, just in case the board decides to push this further. He left them stunned, already calculating his next moves. Kozlov's death was supposed to end things, but instead, it seemed to have opened new complications. The meeting tonight would be crucial. Either Kozlov's associates would honor his final wishes, or Elijah would be facing a new war on multiple fronts. His phone rang as he reached his office. Admiral Stevens. We intercepted communications about tonight's meeting, Stevens said without preamble. 3 of Kozlov's lieutenants want confirmation of his death and transfer of his operations. I'm not taking over his operations. They don't know that. As far as they're concerned, you killed their boss, so either you're taking his place or you're a loose end to be eliminated. Where's the meeting? Same warehouse. Midnight again. They have a thing for dramatic timing. How many? 3 principals, probably 6 to 9 security. Commander, this isn't like Kozlov. These men don't have his code of honor. They'll kill you the moment they get what they want. Then I'll have to make sure they don't want to kill me. How? By giving them something more valuable than revenge. The rest of the day passed in a blur of patience and preparation. Elijah completed his rounds, checked on Maria Santos, who was recovering beautifully, and performed one more surgery, a complex spinal tumor removal that required 4 hours of intense concentration. His hands never trembled, even knowing what awaited him at midnight. At-home dinner was tense despite everyone's efforts at normalcy. Marcus talked about basketball tryouts, Zara debated the merits of her latest case study, but Amara's eyes kept finding Elijah's reading the signs she'd learned over 20 years. After the kids went to bed, he told her about the meeting. You can't go, she said immediately. Not alone, not into another trap. It's not a trap. It's a negotiation. Kozlov's associates need to know their business interests are protected. I need them to honor his promise about our safety. We both want the same thing, stability. They want money and power, which I can give them in a way. She looked at him sharply. What are you planning? Kozlov had intelligence on every major arms dealer in the Southeast. Information worth millions to the right buyers or to law enforcement. I'm going to offer them a choice: take the intelligence and maintain their operations elsewhere, or lose everything when I turn it over to the DEA. You have this intelligence. I will. Kozlov gave me access when he gave me the phone. He wanted me to have leverage, probably knew his lieutenants wouldn't honor his wishes without it. This is insane. You're a doctor, not a crime boss. Tonight I need to be both. She grabbed his hands, squeezing hard enough to hurt. Promise me you'll come back. Promise me this is the last time. I promise I'll come back. As for the last time, he pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her hair. I can only promise to try. Tom's security team wanted to provide backup, but Elijah refused. This had to be done alone on terms Kozlov's associates would understand and respect. He did accept better body armor and a communication device that would let Morrison monitor the situation. The warehouse looked different the third time, familiar now, like an old battlefield revisited. The three lieutenants were already there: Dmitry Volkov, Kozlov's primary enforcer, Chen Wei, who handled the Asian markets, and Marcus Rodriguez, who ran operations through South America. Each had brought security, turning the warehouse into an armed camp. Dr. Carter, Dmitry said, his accent thick as vodka. Or should I say, Commander, we know who you really are now. Then you know I'm not someone you want as an enemy. You killed Victor. Victor killed himself. I just held the blade. The truth of it, stated so plainly, made them pause. They'd probably expected denials or justifications, not this calm acknowledgement. Chen Wei stepped forward, smaller than the others, but radiating the kind of danger that didn't need size. Victor's phone. You have it. Elijah pulled it out, noting how every gun in the room tracked his movement. I have it. Along with every access code, every contact, every piece of blackmail material he collected over 30 years. That belongs to us, Rodriguez said. No, it belonged to Victor, and Victor gave it to me with specific instructions. He pulled up a file on the phone, showing it to them, most of them without letting them take it. 3 terabytes of data. Everything you need to maintain operations, but also everything that could destroy you if it reached the wrong hands. You're threatening us. Dimitri's hand moved toward his weapon. I'm offering you a deal. You take the international operations, everything outside the United States. You leave Atlanta, leave my family alone, never come back. In exchange, you get the data and my word that I'll never use it against you. And if we refuse, then the FBI, DEA, ATF, and Interpol all get Christmas presents tonight. How long do you think you'd last with every agency in the world hunting you, using Victor's own intelligence against you? The silence stretched taut as a sniper's trigger finger. Finally, Chen Wei laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Victor was right about you. You think like us but fight like them. A perfect hybrid. He looked at the others. I accept the deal. Rodriguez nodded slowly. The American market was always more trouble than profit, anyway. All eyes turned to Dmitry, the most dangerous and unstable of the three. His hand was still near his gun, his expression unreadable. Victor trusted you, he said finally. Trusted you enough to die by your hand. That means something in our world. It means everything, Elijah agreed. The data. How do we know you won't keep copies? You don't, just like I don't know you'll honor our agreement. But Victor believed in honor among warriors, even enemies. I'm choosing to believe the same about his successors. Dmitry studied him for a long moment, then stepped back. Send the data. We leave tonight. The transfer took less than a minute. 30 years of criminal intelligence changing hands in a warehouse where blood had been spilled just 24 hours before. When it was complete, the 3 lieutenants turned to leave their security, maintaining defensive positions until the last moment. Doctor, Chen Wei called back. If you ever decide medicine is too boring, Victor's throne remains empty. I've got enough blood on my hands. I prefer saving lives to taking them. Yes, Chen Wei smiled. That's what makes you dangerous. They left Elijah alone in the warehouse, surrounded by ghosts and shadows. Morrison's voice crackled through his earpiece. "Holy shit, Commander. You just negotiated a peace treaty with 3 of the most wanted criminals in the world." "I negotiated survival. There's a difference." "Is there?" "You could have had them all arrested, turned that data over to authorities, and spent the rest of my life looking over my shoulder wondering when their replacements would come for revenge. This way it ends. They get what they want, I get what I want, nobody else dies. You know the agency won't see it that way. The agency doesn't have to live my life. I do." He drove home through the Atlanta night one more time, feeling the weight of the past 48 hours in every cell of his body. The immediate threats were neutralized: Brennan dead, Kozlov dead, his lieutenants bought off or scared off. But Sarah Chen was right about the media attention, Patricia Winters was right about the hospital's concerns, and Admiral Stevens was right about the long-term implications. Commander Carter had won the battle, but Dr. Carter still had to win the war for his normal life. When he got home, Amara was asleep on the couch, still wearing his navy sweatshirt, still waiting for him to return safely. He covered her with a blanket and went to check on his children. Marcus sprawled across his bed like he'd been dropped from height. Zara curled up with a book still open beside her. This was what he'd killed for. This was what he'd negotiated for. This was what he'd sacrifice everything to protect. His phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. For a moment, his heart rate spiked, expecting another threat. But it was from Maria Santos's mother. "Maria wanted me to text you. She says thank you for keeping your promise to check on her. She says you're her hero." Elijah smiled, the expression feeling foreign, after 2 days of violence and vigilance. Tomorrow, he'd have to face the hospital board, the media scrutiny, the investigation that would drag on for months. He'd have to rebuild his reputation, prove his innocence, fight to keep the life he'd built. But tonight he was home. His family was safe. His enemies were neutralized or fled. And somewhere in Atlanta, a 7-year-old girl was sleeping peacefully because he'd kept his promise to heal her. Commander Carter could rest. Dr. Carter would rise with the morning. The war between his 2 selves might never truly end, but for now there was peace. And in the world of shadows and violence he'd once inhabited, peace was the greatest victory of all. His phone rang one more time. Sarah Chen. "Elijah, you need to see this. Channel 5 right now." He turned on the television to find a breaking news report. The anchor, a serious-faced woman he recognized from numerous hospital fundraisers, was speaking directly to the camera. "In a stunning development, the FBI has announced the arrest of 6 members of what they're calling an international arms dealing ring. The arrests come just hours after the death of alleged ringleader Viktor Kozlov, whose body was found in his hotel room, apparent victim of a brain tumor. Sources say the arrests were made possible by intelligence provided by an anonymous source. The DEA is calling it the largest weapons trafficking bust in the Southeast in over a decade." The report continued, but Elijah had heard enough. Morrison or Stevens had made a move using just enough of Kozlov's intelligence to claim a victory without exposing the full truth. It was elegant, really, the kind of operation that looked clean on paper while hiding the blood underneath. "Elijah." Amara was awake, standing in the doorway. "What's happening?" "The end," he said, turning off the television. "Or maybe the beginning. I'm not sure anymore." "Are we safe?" "Safer than we were. The immediate threats are gone, and the long-term ones just got significant incentive to stay away. But tomorrow I have to go back to being just Dr. Carter, and I'm not sure everyone will let me." She moved to him, taking his face in her hands. You've never been just anything, Elijah Carter. You're a warrior who became a healer, a killer who became a father, a man who carries shadows but chooses to live in the light. That's not just. That's extraordinary. The hospital might not see it that way. The media definitely won't. Then we'll fight. Together. The way we always have. He kissed her, tasting determination and love and 20 years of shared struggle. I love you. I know. Now come to bed. Tomorrow's war can wait for tomorrow's sunrise. As they climbed the stairs together, Elijah's phone buzzed one last time. A text from Admiral Stevens. Well done, Commander. Consider your obligation complete. Welcome back to civilian life for real this time. Elijah deleted the message, then did something he hadn't done in 5 years. He turned off his phone completely. Tonight, Dr. Elijah Carter was unreachable. Tonight, he was just a husband, a father, a man who'd fought his last battle and lived to tell about it. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, legal battles, media scrutiny, professional consequences. But tonight, in a house protected by the promises of dead men and the fear of living ones, a family slept peacefully. And in the morning, when Atlanta's sun rose over a city that never knew how close it had come to becoming a battlefield, Dr. Elijah Carter would return to Emory Hospital. He would fight for his job, clear his name, and continue saving lives with hands that had taken them. Because that's what warriors do when the war is over. They find something worth building, and they build it one day at a time, one life at a time, until the scars fade and the shadows retreat, and all that's left is the man they chose to become. The morning brought no peace, only a different kind of battle. Elijah arrived at Emory Hospital to find news vans in the parking lot, reporters clustered like antibodies around an infection. He parked in the underground garage and took the service elevator, but word of his arrival spread faster than surgical gossip. Patricia Winters was waiting in his office with Jonathan Blackwood and 3 members of the hospital board, including Dr. Harrison Mitchell, the board chairman, who'd built his fortune in pharmaceutical investments and never let anyone forget it. Dr. Carter, Mitchell said, his tone suggesting he'd already made up his mind about whatever was coming. We need to discuss your future at this institution. My future? I have 3 surgeries scheduled today, which have been reassigned to Dr. Crawford. Patricia's expression was apologetic but firm. Elijah, please sit down. This is serious. He remained standing. What's serious is that you're preventing me from treating my patients based on allegations that have been proven false. The allegations may be false, Blackwood interjected, but the attention you're attracting is very real. We've had reporters calling all morning asking about your military service, your connection to Viktor Kozlov. What connection to Kozlov? Elijah kept his voice level, though inside alarms were screaming. Mitchell pulled out a tablet showing a news article. The FBI says Kozlov entered the country specifically looking for someone. Given the timing with your arrest, the media is speculating that someone was you. They're asking why an international arms dealer would be interested in a neurosurgeon. I have no idea. Maybe he needed brain surgery. This isn't a joke, Dr. Carter. Mitchell's face was flushing, the color climbing from his collar like a taunt. This hospital has a reputation to maintain. We serve this community's most vulnerable patients. Their families need to trust us. And they do trust us. They trust me. I've never had a single malpractice claim, never had a patient complaint. You've also never had the FBI investigating your background. Blackwood interrupted. Dr. Carter, we've received a federal subpoena for all your employment records. They want to know how you were hired, who vetted you, what background checks were performed. The room went silent. A federal subpoena meant the investigation had expanded beyond Brennan's corruption. Someone was digging deeper, following threads that could lead to classified territories. My background is clean, Elijah said carefully. I served 20 years in the Navy, received an honorable discharge, completed my medical training at Johns Hopkins. Everything is documented. But not everything is accessible, Mitchell said. When we tried to verify your military service record for our own investigation, we hit walls. Classification levels we don't have access to. Redacted files. That's not normal for a standard naval officer. I wasn't a standard naval officer. No, Mitchell agreed. You weren't. And that's the problem. We don't know who you were, which means we don't know who you really are. Patricia stood moving between them like a referee. Harrison, that's enough. Elijah has been an exemplary surgeon for 7 years. One incident with a corrupt cop doesn't erase that. One incident. Mitchell's voice rose. A cop is dead. An international criminal is dead. The FBI is crawling through our records. The media is camped in our parking lot. This is not one incident, this is a pattern of violence following Dr. Carter to our door. Following me. Elijah felt his temper slipping. Commander Carter pushing through Dr. Carter's careful control. I didn't invite Brennan to plant drugs in my car. I didn't ask Kozlov to come to Atlanta. I'm a victim here, not a perpetrator. Are you? Mitchell stood as well, his height meant to intimidate. Because victims don't usually have classified military records. Victims don't usually get visits from Defense Intelligence Agency officials. And victims certainly don't usually have international arms dealers die mysteriously just as the FBI closes in. What are you implying? I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. You're a liability, Dr. Carter. The board has voted. Your privileges at this hospital are suspended pending a full investigation. The words hit like a physical blow. You're firing me. Suspending, Blackwood corrected. With pay pending investigation. It's not termination. It's discrimination. Sarah Chen's voice cut through the room she entered without knocking. And if you proceed with this suspension, I'll file an injunction before lunch. Ms. Chen, this is a private meeting. Not anymore. She pulled out her phone, showing them something on the screen. This is a live stream. Dr. Carter's suspension, if you proceed with it, is already public knowledge, along with the fact that you're punishing a black doctor for being the victim of a racist cop's vendetta. Mitchell's face went from red to purple. You can't, that's illegal. Actually, it's not. This is a public hospital receiving federal funding. Your board meetings are subject to sunshine laws. But more importantly, I have here signed statements from 17 of Dr. Carter's current patients, all demanding he continue their treatment, including this one from Maria Santos, age 7, whose life Dr. Carter saved this week while dealing with your harassment. Sarah pulled out a crayon-written note. Please don't take my doctor away. He promised to fix my brain, and he did. He's a hero. Patricia Winters took the note, her expression softening. Harrison, maybe we should reconsider. One child's letter doesn't change the facts, Mitchell said, but his conviction was wavering. The liability issues alone. The liability, Sarah interrupted, is in discriminating against a decorated veteran who happens to be black. The liability is in punishing a crime victim for the crimes committed against him. The liability is in violating Dr. Carter's employment contract without cause. We have cause, the federal investigation, into Officer Brennan's corruption, not into Dr. Carter. He's a witness, not a suspect. The room fell silent, except for the distant sound of hospital pages and the closer sound of reporters shouting questions in the parking lot. Elijah watched the board members exchange glances, saw the calculation in their eyes, risk versus reward, scandal versus safety. His phone buzzed. Admiral Stevens. News about to break. Brace yourself. Before he could ask what news, Blackwood's phone rang. Then Mitchell's. Then Patricia's. Within seconds, everyone was looking at their devices with expressions ranging from surprise to shock. "Turn on the news," Patricia said, reaching for the remote. The screen filled with a press conference already in progress. Admiral Richard Stevens stood at a Pentagon podium, his dress whites immaculate, his expression grave. "Can now confirm that Dr. Elijah Carter, currently of Atlanta, Georgia, is indeed former Commander Elijah Carter of Naval Special Warfare Development Group. Commander Carter's service record, while largely classified, includes multiple Bronze Stars, 2 Silver Stars, and the Medal of Honor for actions in Syria that saved the lives of 13 Marines during an operation that cannot be detailed for security reasons." The room was absolutely still. Even Sarah looked stunned. Stevens continued. "Commander Carter was medically retired after suffering traumatic brain injury in service to his country. His transition to civilian medicine represents the highest ideals of military service, continuing to save lives in a different capacity. Any suggestion that his military service makes him dangerous or unsuitable for civilian life is an insult to every veteran who has served in classified capacities." A reporter's voice. "Admiral, can you comment on the connection to Viktor Kozlov?" "I can confirm that Viktor Kozlov was a known enemy of the United States, with a particular interest in identifying and targeting former Special Operations personnel. His presence in Atlanta represented a clear threat to Commander Carter and his family. That threat has been neutralized through the combined efforts of federal law enforcement. Was Commander Carter involved in neutralizing that threat?" Stevens's expression didn't change. "Dr. Carter is a civilian neurosurgeon. Any actions taken against Kozlov were handled by appropriate federal agencies." The press conference continued, but Mitchell had muted it. Everyone in the room was staring at Elijah with new eyes, not the suspicious glances of before, but something approaching awe and perhaps fear. "Medal of Honor," Patricia whispered. "Elijah, why didn't you ever say?" "Because it wasn't relevant to my ability to perform surgery. Because I wanted to be judged on my medical skills, not my military service. Because Commander Carter is dead, and I wanted him to stay that way." "But he's not dead," Mitchell said slowly. "He's standing right here. A national hero we were about to fire for being too dangerous. I'm not a hero. I'm a doctor who happens to have a past. That past doesn't affect my present ability to save lives." "No," Sarah said, seizing the moment, "it enhances it. The discipline, the precision, the ability to perform under pressure, all products of his military training. Emory Hospital doesn't have a liability. It has an asset. A surgeon who literally received the nation's highest honor for valor." The door burst open. A young resident Elijah didn't recognize was breathing hard. "Dr. Carter, we need you in OR 3, now." "I told you his surgeries were reassigned," Mitchell started. "Not for surgery. There's been an accident. Multiple casualties coming in, including the governor's daughter. Dr. Crawford is asking for you specifically. He says he needs the best hands in the hospital." Elijah looked at Mitchell, at the board members who'd been ready to end his career moments ago. "Am I suspended or not? Because if I'm still a doctor at this hospital, there are lives to save. If not, those lives are on you." Patricia moved first. "Go. We'll sort this out later." "The board hasn't," Mitchell protested. "The board can explain to the governor why they suspended the Medal of Honor recipient who could have saved his daughter's life," Patricia said coldly. "Elijah, go." He went, leaving the politics behind for the clarity of emergency medicine. The OR was controlled chaos when he arrived. 3 operating tables, 3 critical patients, all from a multi-vehicle accident on I-75. Dr. Crawford looked up from his patient with visible relief. Thank God. I've got a subdural hematoma with midline shift. The governor's daughter, 17 years old. I could do it, but you're better and she deserves better. Elijah was already scrubbing in his mind, shifting fully to medical mode. What's her status? Glasgow coma score of 7 pupils, reactive but sluggish. We've got maybe an hour before permanent damage. Then let's not waste time. The next 4 hours dissolved into the pure focus of neurosurgery. Elijah's hands moved with absolute precision, draining the blood that was crushing the teenager's brain, relieving pressure that would have killed her within the hour. His military training showed in moments like this the absolute calm under pressure, the ability to make split-second decisions with life-and-death consequences. Incredible, the anesthesiologist murmured as Elijah worked. I've never seen hands that steady. You should see him on the range, Crawford said from the next table. Wait, can we say that now that everyone knows about the military thing? The military thing doesn't matter, Elijah said, not looking up from his work. What matters is that this young woman walks out of here alive and whole. And she would. He could see it in the way the brain tissue responded, the way the pressure readings normalized, and the way her pupils began reacting properly as he worked. Another life saved, another family kept whole. When he finally stepped back, the OR erupted in spontaneous applause. Not for Commander Carter, war hero, but for Dr. Carter, surgeon, who'd just performed a miracle with scalpel instead of rifle. Outside the OR, he found chaos. The governor himself was there, along with what looked like half of Georgia's political establishment. But more surprisingly, Admiral Stevens was there too, still in his dress whites. Doctor! The governor grabbed Elijah's hand, pumping it like he was campaigning. They tell me you saved Rebecca's life. I did my job. She's young and strong. She'll make a full recovery. Don't be modest. Dr. Winters tells me you're the best neurosurgeon in the Southeast. And Admiral Stevens here tells me you're also a genuine American hero. I'm just a Dr. Governor. No, Stevens interrupted. You're not just anything. Governor, could you give us a moment? The political crowd dispersed reluctantly, leaving Elijah alone with his former commanding officer. That was quite a press conference, Elijah said. It was necessary. The FBI was getting too close to classified operations. Better to control the narrative than let it control us. And the truth about Kozlov stays buried. Officially, he died of natural causes. His associates have left the country. The threat is neutralized. You're free to be Dr. Carter without looking over your shoulder. Am I? Because right now I might not even have a job. Stevens smiled. I think you'll find the board has reconsidered. Amazing how minds change when they realize they almost fired a Medal of Honor recipient whose patient list includes the governor's daughter. As if on cue, Patricia Winters appeared. Elijah, the board would like to see you. The same conference room, the same people, but the atmosphere was completely different. Mitchell stood when Elijah entered, a sign of respect that would have been unthinkable an hour ago. Dr. Carter, we owe you an apology. Mitchell began, the words clearly painful for him to say. We reacted to incomplete information and media pressure instead of trusting 7 years of exemplary service. You reacted to race, Elijah said bluntly, to fear, to the idea that a black man with a mysterious past must be dangerous. That's not, Blackwood started. It's exactly that. How many white doctors on this staff have military backgrounds you've never questioned? How many have gaps in their records you've never investigated? Silence. However, Elijah continued, I understand the position you were in. The media pressure, the federal investigation, the concerns about the hospital's reputation. I don't agree with your methods, but I understand your motivations. Then you'll stay, Patricia asked hopefully. On conditions. First, a public apology, not to me but to the community. Acknowledge that the hospital's initial response was flawed and that you're implementing new policies to prevent discrimination against employees who become victims of crime. Done, Mitchell said quickly. Second, funding for a new trauma unit specifically for veterans. Too many of my brothers and sisters are suffering with TBI and PTSD without adequate care. This hospital will provide that care. That would cost millions. The governor's daughter is alive because of skills I learned in the military. Consider it an investment in creating more doctors like me. Mitchell looked at the other board members, saw their nods. We'll find the funding. Third Officer Brennan's sister, Patricia Brennan. I want to perform her daughter's follow-up surgeries pro bono. She shouldn't suffer because her brother was corrupted. That's generous, Patricia Winters said softly. It's right. The sins of the family aren't visited on the children. Not on my watch. Anything else? Mitchell asked, clearly expecting more demands. Yes. I want to get back to my patients. I have rounds to complete. They let him go with handshakes and renewed apologies, but Elijah barely noticed. His mind was already on his patients, on the normalcy of medicine, after days of violence and politics. But as he reached Maria Santos's room, he found unexpected visitors. Chen Wei stood by the window looking oddly small in an expensive suit. Two bodyguards waited in the hallway, trying to look inconspicuous and failing. What are you doing here? Elijah kept his voice low, aware of the child sleeping in the bed. Paying respects, Chen Wei said simply. He placed an envelope on the bedside table. For the child's medical expenses, all of them, including future care. Why? Because Victor would have wanted it. He researched you thoroughly, Doctor. This child, her story, your dedication to saving her, it reminded him of his own daughter lost many years ago in Chechnya. He said if you could save this one where he couldn't save his own, perhaps there was balance in the universe. Blood money won't buy balance. No, but it might buy this child a future. The money is clean, legally donated through appropriate channels. A gift from a grandmother in Hong Kong who doesn't exist, but whose paperwork is impeccable. Chen Wei moved toward the door, paused. Victor's final message, the one he couldn't speak as he died. He wanted you to know that you gave him what he wanted most, a death with meaning facing a worthy opponent. In our world, that's the highest honor. In my world, the highest honor is this. Elijah gestured to Maria sleeping peacefully. Life, not death. Yes, that's why you won, Doctor. You understood something Victor never could, that the real victory isn't in ending lives, but in saving them. Chen Wei left as quietly as he'd come, a ghost of the shadow world passing through the realm of healing. Elijah checked the envelope, a cashier's check for $2 million made out to the Maria Santos Medical Trust. Dr. Elijah. Maria's voice was sleepy but clear. You came back. I promised, didn't I? My mama says you're a hero. She says you were a soldier who fought bad guys. I was a soldier, yes, but now I'm a doctor, and my only fight is against the things that hurt people like you. Did you win? Elijah thought about Brennan dead by his own hand or Kozlov's order, about Kozlov dying by choice in an abandoned warehouse, about the violence that had followed him home despite his best efforts to leave it behind. Yes, he said finally. I won. Good. Heroes should always win. She drifted back to sleep, and Elijah continued his rounds. Each patient was a reminder of why he'd left Commander Carter behind, why Dr. Carter was who he chose to be. The teenage girl with the tumor who'd graduate high school thanks to his hands. The construction worker who'd walk again after Elijah repaired his spinal injury. The grandfather who'd see his grandchildren grow up because Elijah caught the aneurysm in time. These were his victories now, bloodless, quiet, but no less meaningful than any mission he'd run in uniform. His phone rang as he finished rounds. Amara. I saw the news. Admiral Stevens outing you as a Medal of Honor recipient. Are you okay? I'm adjusting. It's strange having everyone know. The kids are handling it well. Marcus is telling everyone his dad is basically Captain America. Zara is using it as evidence for her debate about military service and citizenship. Of course she is. Elijah, her voice softened. Is it really over? The danger, the shadows, all of it. He looked out the window at Atlanta spreading beneath the afternoon sun. Somewhere out there, Chen Wei and the others were preparing to leave, taking their violence to other shores. Somewhere federal agents were processing the intelligence he'd selectively shared, building cases that would take down smaller threats. Somewhere reporters were writing stories about the Navy SEAL who became a brain surgeon, the warrior who chose healing over killing. The immediate danger is over. The shadows, those never fully go away, but they're pushed back far enough that we can live in the light. That's all I can ask for. Come home when you can. I'm making your favorite. I'll be there by 7. Good. Oh, and Elijah, your son wants to know if you can teach him some of those SEAL moves. Absolutely not. That's what I told him. But maybe some basic self-defense wouldn't hurt. We'll discuss it. He ended the call and made one more stop. Patricia Winters was in her office door open, clearly waiting for him. Hell of a day, she said. Hell of a week. Elijah, I need to ask you something off the record. Did you kill Viktor Kozlov? He met her eyes steadily. Viktor Kozlov died of a brain tumor. The autopsy confirmed it. That's not what I asked. That's the only answer that matters. She nodded slowly. The veteran trauma unit you proposed. I've already got the governor pledging $5 million. The senator is offering federal grants. By tomorrow, we'll have full funding. Amazing how generous people become when they realize you saved their loved ones. Or when they realize you could have killed them just as easily. She held up a hand at his expression. I'm not judging. I'm just saying that Commander Carter's reputation opens doors Dr. Carter couldn't access alone. I never wanted those doors open. But they are. The question is, what will you do with them? It was a good question, one that would take time to answer. For now, Elijah had a simpler goal: go home, have dinner with his family, help his kids with homework, sleep beside his wife without worrying about threats in the darkness. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The media attention wouldn't disappear overnight. The FBI investigation would continue, even if he was no longer a suspect. His colleagues would treat him differently, some with respect, others with fear, all with the knowledge that the man who saved lives had also taken them. But tonight, Dr. Elijah Carter would go home to his family. Commander Carter would rest possibly forever. And somewhere between the two identities, the man who was both and neither would continue the work of healing himself, his community, and the wounds that violence always leaves behind. The sun was setting as he left the hospital, painting Atlanta's skyline in shades of gold and crimson. Reporters still waited in the parking lot, but hospital security kept them at bay. Someone shouted a question about his Medal of Honor. Another asked about Kozlov. He ignored them all, focusing on the simple act of walking to his car, driving home, returning to the life he'd killed to protect.